we are never truly lost. Well, okay, sure, maybe we get turned around for a few days in the woods, where life just feels like it's getting the best of us, and everything's going wrong. And I'm Mike Martin, and I've stood right where you're standing, lost, beaten down, like nothing's ever gonna change. And that's why I built this camp. And that's why I'm inviting you to join me and all the members of this wild community. Because you know what, friend? It does get better. So come along with me into the wild and let me show you this awesome, unique skill set that lays within inside of you. With help from the land, we're gonna unlock the steward that's inside each and every one of us that will lead the way out of the darkness and into healing. Here at the Camp of Healing on Project Mindfully Outdoors. Within each of us lies a need, an appetite, a desire, one that is rooted within the very core of who we are. And when it goes unfed, it threatens to bring the beast within to the surface. This appetite is something that cannot go unfulfilled, because if left that way, it'll still find a way to feed itself, often consuming us from the inside out, bringing us to our knees, leaving us standing in a pile of ashes that was once the world that we worked so hard to build. Though we should not live in fear of this appetite, it's one that instead we should be mindful of, while working to better understand it. And the wolf stands as a pillar of reason and comprehension to help with that journey, to offer man a visual reminder of his truest nature, that while each of us is capable of good, we are also capable of bad as well. Which side of the coin will find its way to the surface is rooted within our hunger for expression. Once verbalized by Sitting Bull of the Hapaka tribe during a memorable speech, there is a war that is going on inside each of us. One wolf is good and the other wolf is evil. Which one will win? The one that you feed. And in today's fast-paced world of addiction, abuse, neglect, and so many more misdirected avenues that are everywhere we turn, Sitting Bull's words still hold their weight in gold as a reminder that we are empowered, even in today's world where we can feel so disempowered. If, and only if, we choose to be, even though that appetite is always scratching away at us, begging for its nourishment, it's our own hand that can and does decide to feed that beast within. The urge of that appetite should not be what decides that it is fed by. Instead, it should be the hand that picks the berries from the tree that offers to that hunger inside the nourishment which allows the wolf that serves the best version of ourselves to grow stronger with the strength and a wisdom that allows him to lead us along that path to discover the best version of ourselves. You know, one of the most important aspects when we get out in the outdoors is shelter. And Alps Mountaineering is one of my favorite companies to go to for my backcountry shelter needs. And I think you should swing by and check them out as well. You know, it's a company that has a vision of providing top of quality performing gear at a price that is tangible and touchable for the everyday outdoorsman and woman. Essentially, it's premium outdoor gear that performs beyond the expectations at a price that we can all afford. So hit the link in the show notes and swing over to Alps Mountaineering to pick up your shelter for this season today. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Project Mindfully Outdoors, the podcast. As always, I'm your guide through the trails of the wilderness that is self-discovery and growth, Mike Martin. And like I always say, I'm very grateful to have you along with me on this journey. Because listen, really, without you, this project doesn't even exist. So it's very much something that I find to be a privilege to be a part of your practice. And as I'm sitting here putting this week's episode together, I'm also in the middle of getting ready to head back down to the Ohio Valley to spend some time at another one of those sites that were left behind by the mound builders of the Hopewell cultures. And I really think that the lessons that remain at these sites are not only moving and powerful, but they're very uplifting. And they open up a lot of new perspective into, that adventure of becoming the best version of ourselves. Which is why I've spent so much time there over the past few months. And also the inspiration for one of the articles in the Wilderness Journal. Because as I looked back and, started contemplating about where I am now in relation to where I was even just a few miles back on the trail, it's really hard to ignore the progress and the growth that I've experienced just by taking the time to tap into nature and really everything that is spirituality. So, when I look back and I think about how it was so difficult to come out of the confines of the old blind to do anything more than, say, go to work or head out to get lost in the woods somewhere. Really anywhere that people weren't is where I was happy to be. And, you fast forward just a few months even, and that perspective has changed a little bit. And I attribute that to the practices of wilderness meditation and tapping into that connection, that spirituality, because it has really led me to find that massive shift, and also be able to look back and realize that, in reality, those days is a prime example of what happens when you allow yourself to feed the wrong wolf. And that was the message in today's meditation that I really, really loved. I can still look back and think about writing that piece, the energy and the excitement that I felt while sitting at Solomon's Cave along the wilderness road, because that adventure represented such a massive change within the journey. It almost serves as one of those visionary moments, as if to say, hey, sure, you've let the weight of life bring you down to your knees right now, but it's not too late to start picking the berries from another tree, a tree that can help you mend the right wolf, which is laid huddled up in the corner, licking its wounds. Sure, I'll give you, there's still days where it's a struggle to reach out and pull that nourishment off the bush and then ride that wolf all the way to the next point. But even in those days, it's important to remember that wolf is still there. That wolf that represents the best version of yourself is still right by your side and still fighting for you. And I think being able to acknowledge that is something that took some time for me personally to really be able to do. And I'm sure it's likewise for any of you that are listening out there. As we go through the course of days, whether they're struggling or they're easy, we got to look for those small wins. Reach for even just the smallest berry on those toughest days and lay that down so that wolf can regain the strength that's needed in order to help us battle through whatever our struggles are. And really, that brings me to today's campfire session with my guest. If you've been a regular listener of the show, then her voice is one that you come to know very well throughout the history of this podcast. In fact, I'm pretty sure that she holds the record for appearances at the campfire. Not that I'm counting or keeping track. And I'm talking, of course, about my good friend, Paige Park. We've had this multiple episode conversation going on, which dealt with the subject of grief, because that's a huge part of what Paige does. She works with others to honor the process of loss and grief through yoga and self-exploration. In fact, she's become the head of the Soul Sanctuary, which is based out of Indiana. Now, today's not one of those typical conversations with Paige, because we decided that it would be a good time to branch off and head in a different direction, while yet remaining true to the theme of past conversations in some ways, because we're going to take a dive into really the most fundamental aspect of that cruel leveler of all man, and that comes from the seeds of connection, because it plays a major role within that battle that's going on inside of us. So on that note, I'll leave a link in the show notes to the Soul Sanctuary if perhaps you would like to check out and reach out to Paige and see how she can help you. But on the flip side of this word from our sponsor, I really hope you enjoy part 4 of this conversation. This episode of Project Mindfully Outdoors is brought to you by the leaders in fire starting technology, Blackbeard Fire Starters. And these are the fire starters that I take into the field because I trust the guys over at Blackbeard, not only for the quality of their fire starters, but also the simplicity of using these products. See, they carry 2 lines of fire starting equipment. They've got the standard fire starter sticks, and they've got your classic fire plugs. So no matter what scenario you're in, they've got you covered. And there's 100% satisfaction money back guarantee that comes along with these products. So there's no risk. Give them a shot. Hit the link in the show notes today. All right. Well, we've done this many a times, my friend.
Yes.
And I think we've beat the drama of grief kind of to a standstill. So
It's time for a new topic.
I believe so. So talk to me a little bit about this idea of connection, just in general.
It was interesting. We were sort of talking a little bit before you started recording. And as you were talking, I was reminded as a kid, my family used to go camping in southeastern Kentucky, the Red River Gorge area. Daniel Boone National Forest is where we would stay. And in the camp, and I was probably like 9, 10, 11. And we were in the campground, and there was this little trail in the campground, which I could take by myself. It was okay. And mom and dad would know where I was, and it just ran kind of along this ridge and then like back into the campground. And I could go find it now because I was there several years ago and I found the spot, but there was a spot where I would just sit and be with myself, and I would look out over the valley below, and I would commune with myself, and I would commune with God, and I would be there with nature. And it was this place where I still, one of my meditation teachers teaches that you have a sanctuary inside your head. And when I go to the sanctuary in my head, that's the space that I go to.
I love that. There's actually that quote from Marcus Aurelius that pops into my head, as much as I was wanting to kind of steer away from that. But there's the part where he talks about how everybody they lust for the idea of going on a vacation to retreat and get away. And, we all have those feelings.
And you froze.
We can have that same exact feeling that we get from those retreats. You get that relaxation, refreshed moment. You come back from 10, 15 minutes of sitting alone, and you're rejuvenated. You're ready to tackle whatever it is that you've got to take care of and get done.
Yeah, absolutely. And I missed part of the quote. Sorry, you froze.
It figures. We always had that problem, don't we?
Right?
But he's talking about how everybody always lusts for that vacation, that chance to rejuvenate and refresh. But we all lose sight of the fact that that's actually within us if we take the time to get that stillness in.
It is absolutely, it's within us. We can take those moments. I know for me, I've been full time in my business now since. Hold on.
Somebody just wants to say hello.
I was worried about you being a problem. See, that happens too. So I'll find moments where I'm just stuck. I can't think of, I'm like getting ready to write something or working on something and the ideas just aren't flowing. And I'll get up and go for a walk. Now it's like negative whatever out today, so I won't do it in that weather, but I'll just go for a walk around the block and take some time to be still and take some time to be quiet, and enjoy what's outside. And I live in the city, sort of. I mean, it's not big city, it's like small town city, but.
Well, I do as well. I live just outside of Detroit, and everybody's kind of really cramped together and there's always people around, but it's that idea that no matter where you are, you can just step away.
Yeah.
And not only sit in the stillness, but you can open yourself up to a connection.
Right.
You can find a spot where you can tap into things. And, I know toward the end of last season, as I was wrapping it up, I was having that same bit of struggle where you're just feeling burnt out and the creative juices just aren't there. So writing becomes a struggle. And I just happened to end up starting this little Midwest meditation journey, hiking adventure series thing, which has been crazy. And I think it's really taught me a great deal about that idea of connecting to more than just what you can see with your eyes.
Yeah. Yeah, I know for me, and a big part of my journey has been the journey inward. And it's funny, I talk about grief and I talk about yoga a lot. But that's what yoga is for me. Yoga means union. It's union with the self. It's union with community. It's union with divine. And it's that, for me, it's that journey inward. It's not what postures and positions I can do. It's not what poses, breathing techniques or whatever. It's what's the thing that brings me back into myself.
I think that's actually a very powerful example because, for you, it's yoga. We tried that before. That was pretty devastating for me personally. But, for me, it's the idea of getting out on a trail.
Yeah.
And, I'm doing the same thing. Like I was telling you before we started recording, a lot of these hiking adventures, there's become this little tradition of we find a spot, we sit down, we record a short little meditation, whatever. And learning, going through that process has taught me a lot more about that journey within.
Yeah.
And just how tangible that is for literally anybody. And not only how easy it is to get into, but how beneficial it is. Because we go through our lives day in, day out, and we all hit that point where we're burnt out. We're looking for that vacation. And, we may not have the vacation time built up at work. We may not have the funds to go out and do it. So we just continue to drive ourselves into the ground. But if you even just step out of your house, walk around the block, find, a bench or whatever it is, and start simple. It's something that we all can start doing without really any extra thought or any extra effort.
Absolutely. And it's one of those things that, and this is something that I encourage my clients and people that come to my classes, is just breathe.
Yes.
Take a few minutes and just notice. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to change anything. You don't have to do any special breathing technique. Just notice your breath. And the more you notice your breath and the more you pay attention to your breath, oftentimes, not always, oftentimes, the nervous system begins to relax. Now, the mind may start going a little bit crazy, but that's okay. You're just going to not focus on your breath and come back to not focus on your mind, just focus on the breath. Because the mind will do that when we start to settle. It makes up stories and it does things. But we just come back and we breathe.
And one thing I like to really add to that is the fact that, as we talk about this conversation and as people are listening, they go, you guys probably do this so long and you sit down for maybe an hour at a time, whatever it is. I can't do that.
I can't
So
do
I'm not
that.
even going to bother to try. And, it doesn't even have to be that much of a block of the time or that much of an investment. It can be something as simple as 5 seconds, a minute. Yeah, you start out small.
That's a minute or two. Yeah, a minute or two. And then the more you get used to it, the more time you add in. I don't meditate for hours on end. I don't have time for that. I'm a small business owner.
I know a lot of people that I've had conversation with over this little journey during the break has been a lot of, oh, you meditate. Well, you probably sit there for, hours on end. And to me, that's intimidating.
Mm-hmm.
So then, you kind of build on the conversation, you start breaking the walls down and dissecting it. And when the conversation ends, they walk away with this, not only feeling empowered about the idea that these journeys inward and building ourselves up and, meditating, journaling, all that stuff doesn't have to be, I just throw myself right into the deep end.
Right.
I can do this in small chunks. And as I start to do it in small chunks, it becomes easier to build.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but I started, and I vary from day to day. There are times where I'm in it and I can be there and I can sit longer and I can go into a little bit more depth. And there are days where it's just not going to happen. And that's okay. That's a part of the process and it's part of the journey because it's a practice for a reason. It's
right.
Not perfect.
Which also is another thing that's really important to point out and that I love to really bring up in these conversations is the fact that it is a practice. It's unique to the individual that's practicing it.
Mm-hmm.
My practice is going to look 10 times different from your practice.
Oh, absolutely.
Which is going to look 100% different from the person standing next to us.
For sure.
All the way down to somebody that's just getting started.
Mm-hmm.
It's a matter of just being comfortable with what feels comfortable to yourself. And that takes the ability to actually start listening to yourself.
Exactly. And it's not, I have people say, and I don't know if you run into this as well, people go, well, I can't meditate. I can't make my mind go blank. Well, nobody can make their mind go blank.
Exactly.
It's not about not thinking about anything. It's about controlling what is coming up, noticing, paying attention to the thoughts that are coming, not absence of thought.
I think one of the most important things that I've encountered in my work with other people and conversations and so forth over the past few months has been this idea that they're so stuck on, all the negative aspects of themselves that life is. So that becomes their narrative.
Yeah.
And about me. And if it is so true in the moment, do I like how I feel about that truth? Can I change that truth? what can I do to improve myself?
When did you start? I'm sorry, you froze again. Were you talking about, I know you were talking about like the negative thoughts, and then you started talking about the truth, but sometimes the negative thoughts aren't necessarily truth.
Exactly. And that's where I've really honed into this idea of showing how through through the time you spend meditating, you can take that statement that, what you thought was a statement, and you can turn it into a hypothesis so that you can examine you can do a fact-finding mission. And if it does turn out to be true and it's something you don't like, then you can start to explore ways to change that element.
Well, and I think it's so important when we enter these spaces and when we enter these practices and when we enter this connection, especially with ourselves, that we do it from a space of, I'm not going to be judgy.
Exactly.
I'm not going to judge myself. I'm not going to condemn myself. I'm not going to, like, as the thoughts come, I'm just looking at them. I'm paying attention to them. At first, I might just be dismissing the thought. Oh, that's a thought. I'm going to let it go. It's always my first step. Oh, that's a thought. I'm going to let it go. Oh, there's another one. Hi, you're just brush you off to the side. Oh, look, there's another one. And then after a while, once I get good at just kind of sitting and breathing, then I can begin to examine the thought. Oh, that's interesting. I thought about that same thing like 6 times. Well, let's look at that. Is that something that's really true? Is that true for me?
It almost brings up the analogy of the idea of, just a freight train running down the track with all your thoughts just slamming into you at once. And as you start to hone these practices, as you start to make the mindful effort to sit down and be still and build that connection with yourself, you almost find that surrounding turns from the railroad track to the deli counter. I'm now serving number 1, now serving number 2, on and so forth. Because it all slows down, and it becomes this point where you can actually start to really explore one thought or one suggestion at a time.
Yeah. And I have one of my teachers, and I love this. I use this analogy. She'll go, watch it like a movie screen.
Yes.
And you can, it's part of meditation, part of internal awareness, and part of internal connection is being able to distance yourself from those thoughts, because that's when you can evaluate them, not when you're in the middle of it and when they're entangled in the monkey mind, but when you take a step back and it's like you're watching a movie and you're this third party looking, curious, what are my thoughts today? And taking it from a space of like curiosity and investigation, and not damaging. I don't know what other there was another thought there. I'm not sure what it was, but
I think it's kind of that script that we absorb from the outside world. And a few months ago, I was actually down in your area hiking with somebody through Turkey Run. We were taking on the Turkey Run challenge down there.
Love the Turkey Run. It's so beautiful.
And for this person, it was, we're excited, we're ready to go in the beginning. And I want to say about mile 2.5, mile 3, we hit that hurdle where, it was getting a little more challenging. We had been out there for a little while, and all those negative thoughts that
the mind
this person
barking.
Had been taught started to come up.
Mm-hmm.
And, at that point, you're kind of halfway through the trail, so you're like, you can either go forward or you got a long way back to the truck if you're going to give up.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was like this idea of just watching, and not only watching, but encouraging this person to push through, that was kind of gratifying in my journey, in the things that I've been through, but to see the expression on their face that,
few hours later when we cross the finish line and we're getting the little sticker and whatnot, that you actually made it through and you battled all those things. It was it was a different kind of exposure of the same concept that it takes to sit down and meditate and build yourself up. Is this was a physical aspect of it, you know, one foot in front of the other. I'm already this far into it. I know that I've been told all my life that none of this stuff is going to work out. I'm always going to fail. I'm never going to complete nothing. Lo and behold, one foot in front of the other, I got across the finish line. I did it.
I did it. Yeah.
So it brings out that sense of pride.
It does. It brings out and then it's such a feeling of, oh wait, that wasn't true. That's something somebody told me that I took on, and I decided to believe it. And it's not, even though I thought it was true for me, it's not true for me.
Exactly.
I wonder if there are other things in there that aren't true for me as well.
It's a building block. It's a door opener. It's a real game changer.
To start, it really is.
And you know, just as we kept going further and further along the trail, just that simple, oh, you're already here. What are you going to do? Turn around and go back now?
Yeah.
Was just enough to, you know, bring you back into the moment and kind of silent that voice enough to get around the next bend, or, you know, scale your way up the next cliff, shimmy across those logs, whatever the case may be.
Well, and that's such a metaphor for life and just the journey of where we are and maybe where we want to go. So we're on this journey, right? And we're, you know, I know for me, it's this path of like self-discovery and entrepreneurship and like truly crafting a life that I want to live and love. And, you know, you jump in and it's like, what am I going to do? Turn back? I can't. I'm a different person than I was. You're a different person than you were at the beginning of the trail. There's no turning back from that. You can't go back to who you were. You just have to keep pushing forward to who you are now.
And, you know, that's just not to say that going throughout the whole course, the whole 5 miles was easy.
No.
By no means. I mean, that run up and down the stairs alone was...
Stairs are rough.
Exactly. So, you know, it's like when you meet these hurdles like that, and it's okay to give yourself a break.
Yeah, it's okay to pause, to take a moment.
Right. As you're testing out all these different theories and hypothesis about yourself, it's okay to say, man, this is getting a little hard. It's getting a little challenging. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to, you know, replenish whatever. In that case, it was, you know, I'm going to rehydrate, suck down a couple of energy bars, whatever, and then I'm going to tackle all those stairs. But the same thing goes true for this discovery and these journeys that we're on. You know, we hit the obstacle. We may be a little worn out at the time we get there. It's okay to sit down, regroup.
Integration. We need to it's not, you know, I use this analogy a lot. We're a plant. Plants aren't always in bloom.
I like that one. That's a good one.
Sometimes, and right now, you know, we're in winter. Things are in hibernation. We're underground. We're coming back into ourselves. We're reevaluating before we bloom again.
Yes.
And we have it all coded within us. We just need to stop and find some rest and stillness. So it's like winter is that time of integration. Let's take the things that we learned, because we came to this like culmination in summer when it was so hot, and then it begins to cool off and we begin to go into hibernation in fall, and then winter we're hibernating. And guess what? Spring's right around the corner. Pretty soon those blossoms are going to be popping up again. And we will too, and we will pop up and we will grow again. And there's different seasons in our lives. Some where we're buried and we feel like we're buried, but we've really been planted, and we just need to hold on because spring's coming.
I think that's a beautiful analogy and expression that really can help people that are going through different cycles of depression.
Mm-hmm.
Or not even to be that person, but to be somebody that's with somebody that goes through those cycles. And there's the frustration that you can't necessarily take those moments away. You can't really help solve the depression. You got to watch them go through it, watch them work their way through it, and understand that internally they're learning from the process. They're learning from those moments, and they're essentially growing roots underground. When they come out of that little swing of depression, they're there to bloom. They're back to being a better version of themselves.
Yeah, but I think we can apply that to anything.
We can. That one really pops to mind because of an experience I had the other day.
Okay.
Where it was just like, everything all of a sudden just felt deflated, and the depression kicked in, and there was that frustration that, no one can, people that wanted to help couldn't help. And I'm just, I got this. This is my cycle. This is what I do. I gotta process it. I gotta learn from it.
Yeah.
And when I come out of it, it'll be okay. And trying to find words to vocalize that, it just seemed like it made that tension back and forth a little bit more thick. So I think that actually is probably one of the best ways I've heard that put.
Yeah. Well, and we go through those cycles in our lives where we're planted, we're underground, we're feeling overwhelmed, overloaded, stress is kicking in. But here's the thing, these practices are there for us even when we're feeling low. And maybe it looks different. Maybe it's 5 minutes of just sitting with yourself. Maybe it's 1 minute or 30 seconds of sitting with yourself, like whatever you can muster up in that time frame. And then maybe we go back to our regular practice. So just knowing that stuff is there for us to lean on all of the time, but especially when we're struggling.
Which, when you put yourself back in the shoes of being that person, almost feels like the idea of putting together your backpack for a hiking trip. You know that there's going to be times where I'm going to be dehydrated. I'm going to be thirsty. I got the water. We're going to be okay. I got my snacks when I get hungry. I'm going to be okay. It's just letting somebody that's sitting at home knowing that we're out on the trail and wondering, getting them to understand that I'm not crazy for going to do this adventure. I'm really prepared. I got this.
Yeah.
And having that line of communication is so important.
Absolutely. So I had an experience. I want to share this if it's all right. I had an experience last year. I sold my house. And I moved into like 400 square feet. So, which was huge for me. I'd never lived, or at least not since college. I hadn't lived in a space like super small. And it was this process of releasing so many things, because one of the things that I brought with me was a lot of the things that my parents had left behind, because I felt like I had to carry that burden. Here we go, talking about grief again. But anyway,
it was impossible to not touch
it's impossible to not touch on it. It's a huge part of my story. So I scaled these things down. I decided, what truly do I want with me and what can I let go? And so there was this huge process of letting all of these things go. And it culminated the day of my big move when my mom had this pie safe. And it was the one thing that I knew when she passed away that I was taking with me. I sold it because it would not fit in my new space. It was huge. My space is small, would not fit. And I cried, like the woman came to pick it up, and like tears are forming as I'm going to open the door for her. And she was so sweet. She was like, we love old things. I've taught my girls to love old things because it was my grandmother's, and it had been around for a while. And so, it was gone. And then I spent the weekend moving. And then that Monday, I went in to close on the house, and I'd been through a lot emotionally over the last couple of weeks because it sold very quickly. Once it sold, I had I think 3 weeks to sell everything and move out. And I'm sitting at closing with my realtor, who's a dear friend, and I'm struggling. I'm visibly struggling, and he can tell, and he looks at me and he's like, Paige, are you okay? I was like, I'm fine. Just I'll be okay. Just let me be in this. And sometimes we need to go through that struggle, like a seed beginning to sprout, having to push through and push the roots down so that we can become that next thing and that we can bloom. And it was funny because, not funny, haha, just like funny, interesting. He looked at me at one point and he goes, are you sure you're okay? And I was like, I'm fine. Just let me be in it. You can't take this away. Just let me be here. Let me be in this and I'll be all right. I said, I just got to feel it and I got to feel my way through. And he looked at me and he goes, we just don't let people do that, do we? And I was like, no, we don't let people feel their feelings. We want to take the hurt and the pain away, but sometimes the only way is through. We can't always take the hurt and the pain away. It's there. And we just have to find our way through it and in it and embrace it and be a part of it.
Yeah, that's something that a lot of us really don't look at. We want to throw that Band-Aid over the wound when somebody that we love or care about is struggling with something. And when we can't, it's extremely frustrating.
It is.
It adds to the tension in the room, just like I went through the other night. It's like, I got this. I know I gotta walk through it. It's going to be okay. Yeah. There's nothing you can do that's going to change the process that I have to go through in order to get to the other side.
Right.
Or to get up those 150 stairs.
Right. I can love you. I can support you, but I can't take it away.
Right.
I can sit with you. I'm not experiencing it, but I can be with you in it. I always like the analogy of Winnie the Pooh, right? Nobody ever tells Eeyore you have to feel better. They just put their arms around him and love on him. And that's what we can do when someone we love is experiencing something. We can be there for them. We can be there with them. We can give them a hug. We can hold their hand, say, I'm here with you if you need me. I know that you need to go through this on your own, but I'm here.
And together we can honor the journey and make it just another destination that we look back on and say, hey, we climbed through that together. It's gonna be easier next time.
Right. Yeah, because we need, as humans, we need community and people and connection. Like, we crave connection. We were not made to be alone and solo and by ourselves and isolated.
It's funny you say that because I don't know, a few months ago I probably would have argued and said the opposite.
And I would have said, but I'm here for you, my friend. So you're wrong.
I think that's probably something that I really gained out of this podcast journey is that understanding, and not only understanding, familiarity, and downright being comfortable with it.
Right. Yeah. Well, and sometimes maybe our family or the people around us aren't the community that we necessarily need. Maybe we need a different aspect of community because that's not being fulfilled. Does that make sense? I know that makes sense to you.
Oh, absolutely, it does.
like I have a really solid, I don't have a lot of family left. My family was fairly small and most of them are gone. I do have a lot of extended family, but my immediate family, it's me and my brother and a couple of nieces and some kids. Like there's not very many of us left, and half of them live in Orlando. So I don't see them very often. But like we come together, and I also have a friend group, and my friends have become my family. I had a friend a few years ago found out I was going to be spending Christmas alone and wouldn't have it. She wouldn't have it. She was like, okay, well, let's do something then. And if you knew my friend, you'd understand. And so we started gathering, like a small group of us started gathering at Christmas, and it's just like grown a little bit every year. And it's those who maybe don't or have a small number of family or don't have a lot of family, or maybe their family doesn't do something and they just want a place to be. And it's really beautiful. We eat and we play games and we laugh and we giggle, and it's very low stress, and it's probably more fun than being with family sometimes.
It brings back Thanksgiving Day, because I was in that same boat. So we ended up down in Cuyahoga Valley and on the trails all day, and I'll tell you that was very satisfying, very fulfilling.
Yeah.
A very, very amazing day.
Yeah, and sometimes it's doing something different than maybe what everybody else is doing, like hitting the trails. Or I know my brother one Thanksgiving, now he was by himself. He flew in and went to a cabin by himself in Alaska because that was what he wanted to do, and that was fulfilling for him.
And that leads into that story that I was telling you before we started recording about the experience down there at Cuyahoga Falls in the Campbell Cave. So I think what I gained from that is not only the idea that, we build these connections with ourselves and the world around us through the experience and taking the time to be open and aware of, but when we take the opportunity to venture outside of ourselves and do things that are fulfilling, we've really, really learned the safety within expanding ourselves, within growing ourselves.
Yeah. Well, and there is that space outside our comfort zone. That space between, that space in between, so we're safe and we're comfortable. But if we push that a little bit, that space between, okay, we've gone too far and this is my comfort zone, is the sweet spot. That's where the magic happens. That's where growth, like you said, that's where growth happens. That's where connection happens. That's where new connection happens, either within or within community.
I think that's where also we learn to not be so skeptical.
Yes.
Because that was probably one of those very first real experiences that I was just telling you about through that really outdoor, rugged kind of meditation, where I guess I tapped into and connected with something extremely special that day.
Yeah. Well, and I had it and then I lost it. Hold on. It's how we learn to trust ourselves. That's what I was going to say. It's how we learn to trust ourselves. We take a step and then we're like, oh, okay, this is really all right. I can trust myself in this.
That's actually a beautiful way to put it. So as we do come toward the end of our time for this episode, you know how I like to wrap these things up, right?
Yeah, but it's been a minute, so you're going to have to remind me the question.
So from the past, I don't know how long it's been, easily a couple of months.
Mm-hmm.
You got to leave us with some words of wisdom from the most recent parts of your journey.
Words of wisdom. Find the magic. Find the magic in your life. Get yourself outside when you need to and learn to sit with yourself. Even if it's for 30 seconds. You got to start somewhere.
Absolutely, you do. And I think that to build on that would be just allow yourself the space to set your ego aside and realize that it's not as scary, and people aren't going to judge you as badly as you think.
Yeah.
And most importantly, it's a good thing for you. It's beneficial.
Highly. It's the way we expand. It's the way we grow.
So I know that things have come a long ways for you since the last time we sat down.
They have. Things have changed a lot.
You have to let people know not only what you got going on, how they can get a hold of you, and all that good stuff.
I can be found at soulsanctuary.one. It's my website. On Instagram, I'm page_park_drain. And on Facebook, it's Soul Sanctuary. So I am still working with grief. Can't get away from that. It's part of my life. It's a part of our journey. But I work with people on nervous system regulation. So I have a arsenal of tools that I can teach you. I can teach you how to meditate and give you tools for meditation. We can add in movement. I also work with nutrition. So how are you feeding yourself? And what are some things that you can incorporate in your everyday life to help support you when those moments of being buried or feeling buried come along?
It seems that you've definitely branched out from just the grief thing.
I have. I still do grief. So, I obviously, if you're grieving, I also work with kids. So I work with kids and families. I am a former educator and have years of experience in working with kids with severe behavior problems and mental health concerns. So, in addition to adults, I also work with kids.
Well, I'm very happy that things have really started to expand and take off for you.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride.
I think all the adventures that are worth and that we're meant to have are wild rides.
Yes, they are. They are fun.
Well, keep up the good work. I'm glad we got to get together again.
Me too.
And I'm sure we'll do it again sometime soon.
I'm sure we will.
All right, that is it. That is all. That is the end. we have reached the end of yet another edition of Project Mindfully Outdoors. You know, honestly, when I look back at this conversation that I had just had the opportunity to share with you, I can think of nothing more than this simple phrase. This right here is a representation of a wonderful friendship. You know, throughout this podcast journey, obviously, if you look back through the catalog, there's been conversations with Paige that have taken place. However, there's been many other conversations that, you know, were met one-on-one that there was a lot of support and help through. And that, I think, is something that this journey has taught me. The value of friendship, the value of connection, even at the risk of loss. You know, something that I think we're all afraid of is the idea of putting ourselves out there because of the inevitability of the hurt that comes with that inevitable loss. But on the flip side, the rewards for those connections are so much stronger. They far outweigh those moments that you have to feel the pain when inevitably time changes your surroundings. So, you know, for that, I not only want to thank Paige for continuing to grow and expand the record of being the most good appearing guest at the campfire, but I also want to thank her for. So, until next time, my friends, get out there in the wild. That's where the stillness and the adventure lies. See ya. Hey, one more thing before I let you go. I'll see you swing over to projectmindfully-outdoors.co and join the growing and expanding newsletter. And while you're there, check out the Wilderness Journal. That way you can stay completely with all my latest adventures. Until next time, we'll talk soon.